could just hear the frantic terror in their voices, not knowing exactly what was happening. And I can't even imagine how many of these officers on the scene today, from DPS to Border Patrol to the local law enforcement, had children inside that building or perhaps family members inside that building and still wondering what was unfolding inside.
And we do know that, Vanessa, you were saying they pushed you back for a bit. You're back on air with us, but you're at the front of the school. And it seems to us, what we can see, that a lot of that activity is on the side to the back of the school is where all that law enforcement is gathering.
That's correct, Audrey. And we can still hear, chopper overhead. I'm not sure if the DPS chopper was out here earlier today, but you can see behind the school, they have a sort of a tent set up. That is what looks like the source of the investigation. When I first arrived here earlier, the majority of law enforcement officers were all focused in the back of the school. It's hard to estimate how many, but the entire area you're looking at right now is full with law enforcement officers, once again, from Border Patrol to DPS to local law enforcement. And then about 45 minutes after that, we saw a group run into the building. That included a SWAT team. It appears to be from San Antonio police run into the building. We have still not confirmed exactly why they were running into the school, what they were looking for. We are still trying to confirm that as well, what they were looking for inside. We also saw, many school buses leaving the scene earlier. Those buses full of children heading over to the Civic Center to reunite with their families. So I can tell you also, when I got here today, there were so many people lining the streets out here, just waiting to find out what happened. Talk to parents wondering, how do I find my child? I can't imagine what this community is experiencing right now, finding out this information that we're sharing right now.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. And hopefully all parents have been reunited with their children now. The children were evacuated to the Willie De Leon Civic Center. And about an hour ago, they were releasing those children to their parents. We do know 13 children were transported to Uvalde Memorial Hospital with injuries, and that 2 people have died at that are dead there at the hospital. 2 other people were airlifted to San Antonio at University Health, a 66-year-old woman and a child. Let's go back live now to Matt Houston at the scene there in San Antonio. Matt.
Deb, the 66-year-old is in critical condition. Again, that generally means serious injuries here at University Health. Again, this is one of the largest hospitals in the entire state of Texas, one of 20 Level 1 trauma centers. There are 193 Level 4 trauma centers, of which Uvalde Memorial is one. Generally, smaller rural hospitals will send their most urgent cases to major metro areas at San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Austin. There are also major trauma centers in Waco and Tyler. That's obviously the case here. Again, it's critical condition for the 66-year-old. We don't know how the child here at University Health is doing. We can tell you it looks like a pretty normal day from the outside here in San Antonio. Uvalde Memorial generally sends its patients who need urgent care to University Health or to SAMC in San Antonio. All of those hospitals are part of the Southwest Texas Regional Advisory Council, that STRAC. You heard a lot about that council during sort of the peak of the COVID wave here in San Antonio. So obviously they have some practice working with one another. San Antonio played a massive role in accepting some of the most urgent patients from rural hospitals during that scenario. Obviously a different situation today, but good to know that there has been frequent collaboration between these hospitals, good communication between the hospitals, and STRAC overseeing all of that with experienced leadership on scene right now to treat those 2 patients. Again, one 66-year-old in bad shape, and a child whose condition we don't know at the moment. We're going to keep you posted as we get updates from University Health. We know that the shooting was reported around 12:23. University Health let us know they'd accepted 2 patients at 1:40. So, give or take an hour difference between the 2. That would be a pretty good indication, as Deb said, that they were airlifted, and we do have that confirmed. So we'll keep you posted as we learn more about the condition of these 2 patients. 66-year-old in critical condition. We don't know about the child. Deb, Audrey, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Matt. We want to get back to Uvalde. We have Alicia Nieves there at the Willie DeLeon Civic Center. We want to check in with her to see what that scene is looking like. Alicia.
Audrey, we're awaiting a press conference by district officials here in Uvalde. They tell us it will be happening within about half an hour. And right behind me, you have district officials standing by. I want to point out we have a lot of members of law enforcement. DPS, you have members of the sheriff's office here, Border Patrol, guarding the doors to the Civic Center and the perimeter. So this is the area where parents were said to go and pick up their children. And right outside the doors, they have a sign here that tell the parents which classes have the students at this center where they can go and pick up their students. Uvalde just tweeted that parents are being asked to pick up students at the regular dismissal times at the child's campus for other students. There will be no bus transportation, the district is saying. Officers will be on site to escort the students and the parents to their cars, or the students rather, and then they're just asking for the parents' patience at this time. This is something that the Uvalde community, we spoke with some city officials who were just here moments ago dropping off water to the crews, and they just said, you know, this kind of thing doesn't happen here. I think they're still trying to grasp everything that's just going on. The Border Patrol official, when we were coming here to park at the Civic Center, he did tell us that this is still a very secure perimeter. There is still an active threat, but he did not say any other specifics. So we are hoping with this press conference, again, that's expected to happen within about 15 to 20 minutes now, we are hoping to learn more information. We do know, as Matt reported, we have several injuries. This is affecting both children and parents. And so district officials are just preparing to keep us updated. Members of the media are here. We have a staging area for ambulances about 2 minutes down the road off Main Street. You had ambulances from Valverde, Utopia, San Antonio Fire Department. They had one of their mass casualty vehicles on standby just in case they need help. But they say at this time, they are not getting the call. They're just preparing. So another look at the Civic Center. We have city officials here, district officials, law enforcement. They are awaiting a press conference. We have helicopters, multiple law enforcement vehicles surrounding this area. So if you are driving down Main Street right now, be prepared to drive a little slower, maybe drive around if you can. But we will bring this press conference to you live as it happens on air and online. Once again, we hear that should be happening in about 15 minutes now. Ladies.
All right. Thank you so much, Alicia, for that update. And like she just mentioned, in about 30 minutes, we're expecting to hear from Dr. Hal Harrell, who's the superintendent of Uvalde Consolidated School District, as well as law enforcement officials who are working at that very active crime scene. Now, it was around 2:47 that Uvalde Memorial Hospital, they did confirm that 2 people have died in this active shooter situation. 13 children were transported to their hospital, Uvalde Memorial Hospital. They also had 2 children transferred to San Antonio, and 1 child is pending transfer. And we also know that 1 woman, a 66-year-old woman, is in critical condition at University Hospital as well. And there is another child there that is one of those children who was transferred. So still a very active situation. This is a live look there at Robb Elementary School there in Uvalde. Uvalde, just 85 miles west of San Antonio. San Antonio PD, Bexar County Sheriffs, FBI, as well as other surrounding local law enforcement agencies have been there all afternoon since this whole situation unfolded, trying to assist in any way they can. Just a very heartbreaking situation. We now have confirmed 2 people killed in this active shooter situation there at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, the small town of Uvalde. Now we do know Uvalde Memorial Hospital, again, they were treating 13 injured there, and 13 liters of blood have been sent there from the blood bank, have been sent to Uvalde Memorial Hospital to help with that situation. We don't know the Uvalde Memorial Hospital. We don't know the conditions of those children right now, but we do know 13 kids were injured and they were sent there. We want to send it on over now to Henry Ramos, who is also there at the scene. Henry, what can you tell us right now?
Within the last 3 minutes, but let me step aside and show you exactly what we're seeing out here. So as you mentioned, yes, we're in front of the hospital. You can see law enforcement is staged right at the front. Several law enforcement agencies, from what I'm reading, Kinney County Sheriff's Office, obviously Uvalde Police, directing people. I've seen people walking in and out of the hospital. Obviously, as you can imagine, many people shaken up, trying to figure out exactly what is happening if their loved one is here. What we do know as the latest information, and I know that you and Deborah, Audrey, have been sharing this, but here at the hospital, they received 13 children here at the hospital to receive treatment. As we know, 2 unfortunately have passed away. Just so you know, too, I was trying to get some context just from people who live here in Uvalde, and I actually just did an interview with a grandmother. Her name is Mary Henson. She actually lives just about 4 blocks away from Robb Elementary. This was a very tough interview because her grandson, named JJ, 9 years old, was inside the elementary school when this shooting was unfolding. She said the shooter was so close to his classroom, it was just across the hallway from where her grandson was at. Her grandson escaped because as soon as his father heard what was going on, he showed up to the school. He went to his son's class and he pulled him out of the window. She said students were being pulled out of the windows here of that classroom. Thankfully, JJ is okay. Her grandson is safe. He actually took refuge at a funeral home that was across the street from the elementary school. I mean, just to sum it up, I mean, it is very difficult for all of us and here that are on the ground back in the studio to report on these types of situations because we are dealing with family members, with children, with loved ones. As grandmother Mary put it to me, this was supposed to be the most joyous time for these kids. This was their last week of school, Thursday being their last day. Here today and tomorrow, they're receiving awards, you know, reminiscing of the school year, looking forward to the summer. And now they're dealing with what we know right now, 2 of their classmates not being able to complete the school year this year. 2 children, unfortunately, pass away. Others, several others, now injured. Of course, the severity is still unknown. But Memorial Hospital, they have been prepared for this as they've received so many patients inside their ER. But what I can tell you, we see a chopper now just passing by here across from the hospital. We're just on the other side of the orthodontics office. Just from what I'm gathering, a lot of people just showing up kind of confused on their cell phones, trying to make up if they can get closer to the scene. You can see that chopper there in the sky there, as this is very much an active scene. I can't tell you though exactly. I haven't been able to map it out just how close we are to the elementary school, just to give us that kind of insight as well. But we do know that from University Memorial, from the last update, that at least 13 students were treated here. 2 children unfortunately died. The hospital is saying, though, that they do ask you to refrain from coming to the hospital, which is why I do believe we have such an extent of law enforcement here. But as I mentioned, Audrey and Deborah, just interviewing Mary, she said, Uvalde, as we know, is a type of community. They basically know one another. Me being from a small town, I grew up in a community just like this. You know everyone. You feel it when something happens bad, when something happens good. You're there to celebrate. When something happens bad, you're there to pray. You're there to be united. And that's what this community is doing right now. Grandmother Mary put it to me that she says it is truly devastating that this is happening. As she said, she never thought in a million years that this would be unfolding in front of her yard and her backyard, unfolding in front of her very eyes, not knowing if her grandson, JJ, as I mentioned, was inside that elementary school, was going to be okay. He is okay. Escaping from a window, being pulled out of a window from the help of his father and other students as well as teachers. I mean, you can just imagine these children. He is 9 years old, a 4th grader, going through something like this. I asked her, how is he doing, going through something like this? And she said, Henry, he's traumatized. He's very shaken up. It's hard to describe for a 9th grader, or excuse me, a 9-year-old, a 4th grader, to see something like this and to go through something like this, as he took refuge at a funeral home across the street. But again, we are out here at Memorial Hospital. As you can see, several law enforcement agencies directing traffic. We've seen people here just waiting here across the street. I'm assuming that they're loved ones, family members, just trying to get the word. A lot of heartache, uneasiness that these families, really this community is feeling right now, Audrey and Deborah.
Oh,
Terrifying.
Yes. And Henry, did the grandmother say, did JJ describe what he heard? Did he hear gunshots?
Yes, she did. She was just saying that it was one of those things that had happened so quick. It was really chaotic. She didn't go into detail as she really hasn't had a lot of time, Deborah, to really talk to him. I mean, her first priority was to make sure that he's okay. But I did. All she told me was that it was just a lot of chaos. A lot of chaos. Obviously, you can imagine these kids were terrified. They didn't know what was going on. And as she mentioned, her son-in-law, his dad, as soon as he heard something bad was happening, he rushed to the school. Obviously, he knows the classroom where his son is at, and he got to the window and just started pulling kids out, and then they just started running for their lives. But the biggest thing that she told me, Deborah, is that, I mean, he's just traumatized. Just really just sensing chaos is the only thing that she was able to tell me. She even mentioned a neighbor across the street. She was saying that one of their loved ones was shot, and so she said she saw her neighbor just start running to the hospital. Again, I haven't mapped out the proximity of where we're at, but truly devastating are the words, is what Mary told me. I mean, she really was in tears, and rightfully so. This is tough, but it's what this community is going through right now. A small, tight knit community here in Uvalde.
Right. Thanks so much. Henry Ramos there at Uvalde Memorial Hospital, just 7 minutes, about 2 miles from Robb Elementary School. Now, right now, we want to get to Matt Houston, who is at University Hospital in San Antonio, where several people have been transferred there. Matt, what can you tell us? Any updates?
Audrey, we still don't know about the condition of the child who is here at University Hospital. We do know that a 66-year-old is in critical condition. That's generally an indication of serious injuries here at the facility behind me. As we've been telling you, University Health is uniquely equipped to handle trauma cases in a way that Uvalde Memorial might not be. Generally, level 1 trauma centers like University Health have more staff, more capacity, something that we became all too familiar with over the last couple of years as far as hospital conditions go. More staff, more capacity, more technology, more resources to handle really serious cases, which is why it is frequent practice for rural hospitals like Uvalde Memorial. We have plenty in the area surrounding Bexar County to send their serious patients to the hospital behind me. One look right now at the Adult Emergency Care Center here at University Hospital. You wouldn't know what was happening statewide today just from looking at this one particular building at the moment. Not a lot of activity outside. We've heard some helicopters go overhead, but again, no way to tell if that's in any way related to what's happening in Uvalde, and certainly would be pretty typical for a weekday afternoon here at University Hospital, one of 20 level 1 trauma centers in the state of Texas. Uvalde Memorial is one of almost 200 level 4 trauma centers. That's a basic care facility. They are equipped to handle trauma, make no mistake. They do have resources, but generally the facilities are just going to have better technology and more people, which is certainly important in a situation like this in the event that you need to handle an unexpected number of patients beyond what would be, your average Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon here in San Antonio. Uvalde frequently transfers patients to SAMC as well as University Health. We're going to keep you posted as we learn the condition of that child. Again, the 66-year-old in critical condition. Audrey, Deb?
Matt, do we know anything about those 2 pending transfers from Uvalde Memorial? Are they headed there to University as well? Have you heard anything about that?
Audrey, we haven't gotten any details on that just yet, but again, Uvalde generally transfers patients to University Health and then on to SAMC. So we can't assume anything right now, but it would make sense that if there are pending transfers, they could end up here in San Antonio, either at University Health or at SAMC. But no word on that. University Health has been sending out frequent updates. We're in touch with communications staff there, trying to learn as much as we can right now. But generally, when you transfer someone from a level 4 trauma center to a level 1 trauma center, it's an indication that they need more staff, better care at a bigger facility.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. Well, It is 3:30. All of this began unfolding at noon. If you are just joining us, we do want to bring you up to date on what is going on and what we know right now. At just shortly after noon, we received word of an active shooter at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. We have learned that 2 people have been killed. 13 children were taken to Uvalde Memorial Hospital. A woman and a child were airlifted here to San Antonio University Health. The suspect has been taken into custody, and we are waiting right now for a news conference at the De Leon Civic Center where the remaining children, 600 children in that elementary school, were taken and where they were picked up by their parents.
Yes, and we're waiting to hear from Superintendent Dr. Hal Harrell from Uvalde Consolidated School District, expected to speak, as well as law enforcement agencies and the city there on site as well, all lending their support to the school district and to the police department. DPS, we have learned, has taken over this investigation. FBI was also there on the scene, as well as a number of local law enforcement agencies lending a hand as well. Again, this is just one of 2 elementary schools there in Uvalde. Robb Elementary is where all of this situation unfolded. Like Deborah said, we have learned 2 people have lost their lives in this active shooter situation. 13 children were injured. They were sent to Uvalde Memorial Hospital. We do have 1 woman, a 66-year-old in critical condition at University Health in San Antonio, as well as a child whose condition we are not certain about. But there are also 2 others in Uvalde pending transfer, but we do not know where they will be sent just yet.
And we are waiting for a news conference. The superintendent of Uvalde School District, Dr. Hal Harrell, is going to be informing us there at the Civic Center. That is where KENS 5's Victoria De Leon is right now. Victoria?
Looks like we're having issues right now with Victoria.
Okay, I think we're good now, but I was just saying that the Civic Center is just 5 minutes away from Robb Elementary School. Right now, this is where a lot of parents are being directed to pick up some of those students. But right now, I can tell you that there is mostly district staff outside and parents. I want to step out of the way just to give you a better look. Parents have been escorted inside, and then outside, it's mostly, again, district staff and other members of the media. Now, we have not been able to talk to too many parents since we've been here. I can tell you, though, there was one mother who did walk out with her son, very, very young, both of them visibly just absolutely devastated. They were in tears. I did speak to one man who says his wife is a teacher at the elementary school and he is out here waiting for her as well. But at this point, we are going to be staying here for the next couple of hours, trying to gather some more information and talking to some more parents who, many of them on social media at least, saying that this is just absolutely the worst day and the worst possible thing that they could have ever imagined happening. But Deborah, as we're looking right now, the FBI showed up, I want to say about 5-10 minutes ago, and we're going to be keeping an eye out for any other developments. So for now, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Victoria, thank you very much. And we have just gotten word from the Uvalde School District that parents are being asked to pick their children up from the junior high, the middle school, the high school, and the other elementary school, Dalton Elementary School. There will be no bus service today, so parents will need to pick their children up from the school.
Yes, there will be no bus transportation. There are officers on each of those campuses to, help ease everyone's tensions, because this has been such a emotional day. This has been such a scary day. We've heard several stories from families and parents. Henry Ramos spoke to one grandmother who said that her 4th grade grandchild, who's just 9 years old, his father heard about the situation, ran to the school, knew which classroom his son was in, broke a window, pulled his son and several other children out of a window, and then they hid at a nearby funeral home. I'm sure we're going to be hearing many other stories coming out from this terrible, terrible situation. And we want to get back to Alicia Nieves, who is at Willie De Leon Civic Center, where that press conference is about to take place.
At first check, we were told about half an hour, so that should be where we are expected to go inside of the Civic Center right behind me for a press conference. But what we're seeing now, lots of loved ones come up to the door. They are greeted by members of state police, Border Patrol. We had DPS, and they are checking parents in at the door. Then they are walking inside, the parents are, to go and pick up their loved ones here at the Civic Center. They have a sign right outside that lists the classes with that have the children here. We are seeing, as you can imagine, ladies, lots of emotion. Family members walking out, escorting their young children to the car here at the Civic Center. It's a lot, right? It's overwhelming for many of these families and people who work at the district because of what just happened this morning. So we are expecting to walk inside these doors in just a few moments when district officials give us the word, and then they're going to give us an update in detail about everything that happened today. We are hoping. So this is, as you can imagine, a very tight-knit community. We have district officials who have brought water and snacks for families waiting inside, for the children waiting inside. And we have the perimeter being secured right now by members of law enforcement. I see, once again, members of the sheriff's office. You have Border Patrol that are on the outskirts of the Civic Center, lining up on Main Street. We're at West Main Street in Uvalde. And then right down the street, they have that staging area that I mentioned earlier with more emergency crews on standby should they be needed today. You had emergency crews from across South Texas come to Uvalde ready to help. On our drive here, we started our drive at about noon today. I'm sorry, 12:45. And on our drive, we saw multiple law enforcement vehicles, ambulances head to Uvalde to help. So we are on standby now. We are just witnessing more family members. Victoria De Leon, one of our reporters, is speaking with a couple of women right now who are getting ready to walk inside. As you can imagine, these families are just concerned that, they can go and get their loved ones. They just want to embrace them and hold them once again, and they want to know that they are okay. So we will keep you up to date on when this press conference will start. We will stream that for you and keep you up to date as soon as we learn any new details. Ladies, back to you.
All right, Alicia, thank you. And we now want to go live to Henry Ramos, who is at Uvalde Memorial Hospital. Henry.
Yeah, Deborah. And so I come to you with some really sad news. So I just got off the phone. It's a San Antonio family, Lisa DeVour. I've actually done stories with them. They called me while I was on my way here. And she told me, Henry, she was like, I'm on my way to Uvalde. She was like, you won't believe I have 10 to 15 family members that go to Uvalde schools. And we have a few family members who go to Robb Elementary. And I said, oh my gosh, Lisa, how are you doing? She said, we don't know a lot. We just want to get here. Our family's from here. Obviously, we just want to get here. She just arrived. She told me she's at the Civic Center, but she just informed me that a 10-year-old who attended Robb Elementary has passed away. She said she died here at Memorial Hospital. She says the mother, which is her niece, is with her right now. We couldn't talk that much because, as you can understand, they have a lot going on. She was also trying to find one of their other loved ones who goes to the elementary school. They don't know if he got somewhat transported in the bus and then got lost, or if he is at the Civic Center. So they're trying to figure that out at this moment. But again, sad news. This family telling me that a 10-year-old at Robb Elementary was taken here, has passed away from her injuries, and is with her mother. I do not know more than that of exactly where she was at in the school, how many times she was shot, any of that. As you can imagine, it's tough taking these phone calls from family members because, and this is what a lot of families and friends and loved ones in this community is dealing with right now, is so much emotion, so much uncertainty. Let me step aside here, though, and show you just some of what is happening here outside the hospital. So I can tell you, lots of law enforcement. I actually did see someone from the DEA get out of that vehicle. It looks like we do have another chopper right now that is either landing at Memorial right now. You can see, we don't know if they're going to pick up someone to transport them out of here, but you do see another helicopter here landing at University Memorial right now. A lot of law enforcement out here, a lot of family members and just people here within the community just showing up here across the street. The law enforcement are just monitoring of who they're letting in and out of the hospital, as the hospital has made very clear as they just don't want everyone showing up here. In terms of latest numbers, I do want to make a correction because I'd mentioned that 2 children had passed away. At this point, what KINS 5 confirm is that we do know that 2 people have passed away. We don't know if they are in fact both children. Obviously, I just found out that one, a 10-year-old, did die here, according to the family. But we do know that 13 children were taken here to the hospital to be treated. And then we do know, as my colleague Matt Houston is out, City Hospital, at least a child and adult have been taken there. And the last check, the hospital here was saying that they may transport another child to University Hospital as well. We can say, you know, in speaking with that family just now, Audrey and Deborah, very tough because, again, with so many family members that attend here, there's so much uncertainty, especially when you have so many children that attend that elementary school. But just telling me that their niece, the mother, her 10-year-old daughter, passed away here from her injuries at the hospital. It's very, very sad because, as we've been saying since we've been on the air, is that this was the last week of school. This is the time where, you know, if you remember in elementary school, you're looking forward to the summer, you're receiving all those participation awards and all these award ceremonies. There's that hype, and then you have this that happened, and these children dealing with those gunshots ringing out in schools. And obviously, as we know, the current state of time that we're in, right? This is something, unfortunately, that children have to grow up with. But we do know, and I just spoke, as I mentioned, when I was with you ladies off the top about, and everyone else that's joining us, that I did speak with a grandmother, Mary Henson, whose 9-year-old grandson was inside Robb Elementary, and he was actually pulled out of the window from his father as well as other kids. He is safe. Just saying that there was just chaos inside that school. And also saying that for a 4th grader, he's traumatized now as to what he saw, what he heard. And that's tough. And as I mentioned, this is Uvalde. This is a community that's tight knit. They know everyone. This is why you see just even community members. Was talking to a man here. He was just saying that him and his family were in San Antonio and he was driving back, and he said, you know, I'm just going to come here at least to pay my respects outside the hospital, to say a prayer for the family members. He said, for my community. It's devastating. I mean, this community is reeling right now, and you definitely feel that just being here on this side, Audrey and Deborah.
Well, I know Henry, Vanessa was telling us law enforcement leaving the school coming out were just devastated. Their faces were just a lot of people grieving. You know, Uvalde is a place where it's a small community and people are born and grow up there and don't move away. And so, you know, undoubtedly, you know, people in that community, everyone knows someone affected by this shooting. This is video that was sent to us by a viewer right at the beginning of this whole situation when they were just starting to evacuate children by school bus there from Robb Elementary. And you can see parents and law enforcement there in that picture. We understand some of the children taken to Memorial Hospital there were taken by school bus, and some were taken by emergency vehicles.
And just shortly, we are awaiting a press conference by the superintendent, Dr. Hal Harrell of Uvalde Consolidated School District, is expected to speak, as well as law enforcement. City and county officials are also there to lend their support. It still is a very active crime scene there at Robb's Elementary School. But again, we have confirmed 2 people have died in this active shooter situation. 13 children injured, being treated at Uvalde Memorial Hospital. We've learned that 13 liters of blood were sent from the blood bank. So you can only imagine the types of injuries if they had to send 13 liters of blood there to Uvalde Memorial Hospital. There were 2 people transferred to University Hospital in San Antonio. One woman, a 66-year-old, in critical condition, a child as well. We do not know that child's status. And there was one pending transfer, and we're not sure which hospital they will end up at, in San Antonio or a neighboring city. But still waiting to hear more. We're going to send it on over to Victoria DeLeon, who is there at the Willie DeLeon Civic Center. Victoria.
Hey, Audrey. Well, I just went around to look through the window of that reunited with their students. Now, earlier today, this is where Uvalde ISD officials, CISD officials were directing their parents. Now, if I step out of the way here, I want you to see that it is mostly district staff outside, and of course, lots of law enforcement and media presence out here. I have now seen, I want to say, 3 parents who have walked out with their kids, just absolutely devastated, and of course, so grateful to be reunited with their kids, because unfortunately it's just such a devastating situation. We did talk to one man here who is waiting on his wife, who is inside. He says that she is a teacher here. We are still working to talk to some more parents about just the day unfolding. As we learn more, I'm sure there's just going to be so many heartbreaking stories coming from the families and the people in this community. But for now, we are here, and this is where that press conference is expected to take place. We're not sure what time, but we're going to be following these updates and then bringing them to you as we learn more and as we talk to more people in this very tight-knit community. I mean, the pain and the devastation is just, I think, felt throughout all of Uvalde and not just the Robb Elementary community. Audrey, Deborah.
Okay, Jessica, thank you very much. I need to speak with our executive producer, Monica. That Oh my goodness, we have just gotten devastating news from Governor Greg Abbott. 14 students dead and 1 teacher dead. He has just tweeted this. This is at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. Just unfathomable. 14 students dead and a teacher.
I can't even, there aren't any words right now for this situation. Just a heartbroken community waiting to hear more. We do know that one person is in custody, was taken into custody around 1 this afternoon. We're waiting to hear from the superintendent from DPS, who's taken over this investigation, about how this all unfolded. There should be a press conference taking place here any minute shortly, but the town of Uvalde, no doubt, is heartbroken this evening over that news. Governor Greg Abbott, in a press conference, just confirmed 14 students and 1 teacher dead who were there at Robb Elementary School when this active shooter situation unfolded around noon today. It was the last week of school. School was to let out on Thursday, what was supposed to be a joyous time for all of these students and staff of a really hard year to begin with.
Right, coming off of 2 very difficult years. Yes, and we do know a lot, of course, a crime scene. Those students are presumably still in the school. We saw dozens of law enforcement officers about 2.5 hours ago go running into the school, the FBI going into the school. We've not seen them leave Robb Elementary. Perhaps that's when they discovered all of these bodies. We do know 1 child died at the hospital, but Governor Abbott has said 14 children were killed, and a teacher and the shooter as well is dead. And just got that word. So that is 15 dead, including the shooter.
One woman, a 66-year-old, is in critical condition at University Hospital. 1 child is also being treated at University Hospital. We do not know their status. We know that there were some pending transfers there from Uvalde Memorial Hospital, but we don't know the status of those transfers or how those victims are doing. But honestly, at this point, you could just say a prayer for this community. This is heartbreaking.
No, it's just heartbreaking.
We're waiting a press conference again at Willie De Leon Civic Center. Our crews have been there at Uvalde Memorial Hospital speaking to people who are trying to be reunified with their family of the injured. We have crews there at the Civic Center who have been speaking with parents who have been picking up their children, trying to, again, be reunified with them. A lot of these parents maybe showing up and being sent somewhere else, which is terrifying for any parent, any family member to hear. Like you were saying, this is a small community. A lot of people were raised there. They grew up there. Everyone's connected in some way.
Right. And then not knowing if your child, and now having discovered that 14 children were killed, um, the condition of your child. How is your child? Parents are at Memorial Hospital where 13 children are being treated, and possibly only 12 now that we know one has passed away. And we are waiting to hear from the superintendent as more details on this. Governor Abbott has just spoken. We are getting those remarks ready for you right now. But he is the one who confirmed 14 children dead, the shooter is dead, a teacher is dead. Vanessa Croy is at the scene at the school. Let's go back to her live. Vanessa, are law enforcement still inside the school?
Looks like we're having some technical difficulties with her audio, but as you can see, it's still a very, very active scene there. Vanessa's been on the scene since this unfolded about an hour after it all began. Hopefully we can get her back with us because she has been there on the ground all afternoon.
She has. Of course, Uvalde is about an hour and a half away, and once we heard about this, it all started about noon, we dispatched our crews, and they are all now in Uvalde. There's another law enforcement pulling up.
State trooper.
State trooper.
And we know the FBI arrived on scene. We know DPS has taken over the investigation. Uvalde PD was the first responding law enforcement agency. SAPD, their SWAT team was there on site. BCSO was also sending help. We know San Antonio Fire, and then multiple law enforcement agencies were helping out. I know other schools in this district were asked to pick up their children at the regular release time. There will be no buses, so parents will need to go there. There will be law enforcement there, not to be alarmed, but it's to for everyone's safety.
Let's go to Vanessa now. Let's see, Vanessa.
I just wanted to say a few words. We're back out here live at the school. I just heard the devastating news at the same time you did. In the last 20 minutes or so, I hope I can say this, keeping it together, a parent came out here still looking for his child. I can't imagine what these families are going through right now, especially at this time, wondering where your child is at this hour. I do want to show you what's happening behind me right now. Looks like the focus of the investigation looks like a command center is set up behind the school. That's where the majority of law enforcement is staged back there. We did see the FBI is here. We can confirm that. And I did see 2 FBI crime investigation agents just walk down the street to approach the crime scene. Multiple law enforcement agencies have been out here today. I was out here just shortly after we heard at first the suspect was in custody. Now we're learning that suspect has died. It was shortly after that. It was when many of the law enforcement officers were walking out of that school, and visibly from their faces, I could tell that this was horrific. That was actually the words of the Uvalde County Sheriff today. When I arrived here today, I asked him, I know he said he couldn't share any information. They were still trying to figure out what happened. And he told me, this is horrific. Our worst nightmare has come true out here today. And our prayers are with this community. This is a very tight-knit community out here, and truly hurting right now. Deb and Audrey, I'm going to send it back to you.
Oh, it is. Everyone is hurting, and I can't imagine that community. 14 children confirmed dead, 1 teacher and the suspect. Of course, all I can think of, anything comparable to this, is the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting where 20 children were killed, and we have 14 now here in Texas in Uvalde. Here's Governor Greg Abbott.
It was Salvador Ramos, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun, and he may have also had a rifle, but that is not yet confirmed according to my most recent report. He shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly, 14 students and killed a teacher. Mr. Ramos, the shooter, he himself is deceased and is believed that responding officers killed him. The shooter was Salvador Ramos, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and
Ramos,
All right. So, like you just heard from the governor, Salvador Ramos, an 18-year-old is the shooter, confirmed shooter. The governor says that he entered the school with the handgun, possibly another weapon, but they have not confirmed that. And we just learned that there were 14 students killed, one teacher was killed, and that responding officers were able to shoot and kill Salvador Ramos, who was the suspected shooter there at the active shooter situation.
And we are now looking live at Robb Elementary, the back of the school in Uvalde, where a command center has been set up. There's a tent set up there. We believe that most of those students and the teacher are still in the school, which is why we saw so many officers and the FBI go into the school. And the 13 who were transported injured to the hospital. One child died there. But we believe most of the victims are still in the school, and they have set up an area there where they will be bringing them out.
And we do know that one woman, a 66-year-old, is in critical condition at University Hospital, as well as one child who was injured was transported there. We don't know their status at this point, but we are waiting to hear from officials there in Uvalde. They are at Willie DeLeon Civic Center, where they are gathering, and they are supposed to be briefing media in just moments. I saw Vanessa Croy there at Robb Elementary School. Vanessa, that scene's still very active, and from what we can see, it seems like that investigation is taking place on the backside of the school.
Well, that's right, Audrey. From where we're standing, we are actually in the front of the school, but we can see it looks like somewhat of a command center back there where they have a staging area. It looks like the source of the investigation is focused back there. That's where those law enforcement officers, you see them standing under that canopy tent. We know that FBI is here, Border Patrol, DPS. We don't know who is leading the investigation. Once FBI arrived, we assume they are. We heard earlier DPS could be a joint investigation. We know the Texas Rangers are here, as well as local law enforcement, Uvalde County Sheriff's Office, Uvalde City Police. No doubt there is DPS as well. Many of these troopers are from this area. Many of these Border Patrol agents are from Uvalde. Their children most likely attend, some of them, at this elementary school. So it is a very difficult, I can tell you just from seeing the officers' faces walk out of that school building shortly after that suspect. We thought at first he was in custody. Just seeing their faces, how difficult it was for them to see whatever unfolded, to see the aftermath of whatever unfolded inside that school building earlier today.
Much, Vanessa. And like we just learned from the governor, 14 students dead after that active shooter situation at Robb Elementary School. One teacher dead. The suspect, an 18-year-old shooter, also dead, shot by responding officers. We're learned from the governor that that 18-year-old, who is also a resident of Uvalde, entered the school with a handgun and possibly another weapon.
Yes, and I was just looking over timelines here of mass shootings in schools, and only 2 in elementary schools. Sandy Hook, which of course we all remember, 20 students killed there, 14 students killed here at in Uvalde here in Texas. Just terrible, just terrible. And San Antonio and surrounding communities coming to help. Bexar County BSO sending units there, San Antonio Police sending equipment there, Border Patrol, FBI, all responding to help Uvalde deal with this tragedy on this last week of school, with high school graduation scheduled for Friday, dealing with this many deaths that must touch every single person in Uvalde, the community of 16,000 people.
And we are awaiting a press conference at the Willie DeLeon Civic Center where school district officials, city, county, and police are expected to update the media and the community. We want to head out to Alicia Nieves, who is there at that scene. And Alicia, what can you tell us?
We're still waiting for an update, Audrey, to see when this press conference is going to start. But within the past 10 minutes, we've seen a lot of members of law enforcement start to walk through these doors at the Civic Center. And then we're seeing more parents walking in to pick up their children here. And then, of course, we're hearing and seeing, witnessing the heartbreak from other loved ones who are walking out in tears. They are being escorted by members of the sheriff's office, and of course, we are giving them their space. This is as close as we are going to get, and it is just absolutely heartbreaking to witness, you know, what appear to be grandparents, parents, district officials. Just get very, very emotional as they are walking out of this building. We do have chairs that are set up outside of the Civic Center right now, and we have some district officials who are waiting here, and the members of law enforcement continue to secure the perimeter around this building. They are almost to West Main Street, where the Civic Center is located, and they are armed at the doors, just making sure that only family members get inside, that only other law enforcement personnel or district officials get inside. The press conference, when it does take place, will be in this building, but once again, we are awaiting word. And the school has been very, very communicative up until this point, or on Twitter and on Facebook, letting parents know where to pick up their children, letting them know about the bus schedule, letting them know about after-school activities. So we have a full parking lot right now at the Civic Center. We have tents set up outside. We have district officials who have brought water and snacks for these families. And I do want to note, some families have not immediately walked out with their loved ones. We have some who are still awaiting, I presume, news inside, or waiting for word just to make sure their loved ones are okay. So we have some who are seated as soon as you get in. But I myself have not been in the building yet, so I'm not certain of the layout. But that is just what we've been seeing within this past about hour and a half since we have been here. As soon as we get word of the exact time of this press conference, we will, of course, pass that along to you all.
All right. Thank you, Alicia. And of course, we will carry that live. We now want to go to Matt Houston. He has an update on the two people who are brought here to San Antonio. Matt?
What we already knew, that a 66-year-old woman is in the hospital in critical condition. We now know the other patient is a 10-year-old girl, also in critical condition. Again, that's generally indicates serious injuries. We know that when you're care flighted from a rural hospital to a level 1 trauma center, they need more resources, more staff to take care of those injuries and treat those patients. So two patients, 66-year-old woman, a 10-year-old girl, both in critical condition here in San Antonio. One point that's probably somewhat important to make is we're talking about a potential death toll of 14 children at this point. The maximum class size in the state of Texas, barring some rare exceptions, is 22. We don't know that all these kids were in the same class, but we are clearly talking about a generation of Uvalde students now caught up in this tragedy, and something to consider as we hear numbers and think about each one of these kids with a name and a face, including the 10-year-old girl right now in critical condition behind me here in San Antonio. We did hear early reports that Uvalde Memorial would transfer more patients to San Antonio, either University Health or to SAMC. We still don't have any of that confirmed. So for right now, two patients from Uvalde, a 66-year-old woman and a 10-year-old girl, being treated here at the hospital behind me in San Antonio. As we learn more, we'll keep you posted on their condition. University Health has been good about getting us frequent updates so that we can keep you posted. Deb, Audrey?
Okay, Matt, thank you. So now we do know the 10-year-old is in critical condition. Henry Ramos had spoken to a friend of his who lost a 10-year-old niece. So apparently a lot of this shooting must have gone on in a fourth grade classroom. You have two 10-year-olds there, one dead and one critically injured, and a total of 13 students being treated in Uvalde at the hospital there.
But we have learned, we confirmed through Governor Greg Abbott, that 14 students are dead. One teacher is dead. The shooter, an 18-year-old local Uvalde resident, entered that school with a gun, possibly another weapon. And we do know police also were able to shoot and kill him as that situation was unfolding.
Right. We don't know the motivation right now, why he went in there, why he opened fire on all of these children and the teacher. But this is what Governor Abbott said just moments ago.
The shooter was Salvador Romas, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun, and he may have also had a rifle, but that is not yet confirmed according to my most recent report. He shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly, 14 students and killed a teacher. Mr. Romas, the shooter, he himself is deceased and is believed that responding officers killed him.
So there you have it. We heard from the governor, 14 students dead, one teacher dead, and that shooter also dead, killed by police. We want to go to Henry Ramos right now, who is at Uvalde Memorial Hospital, where a lot of those students were first taken. Henry.
Yeah, Audrey and Deborah, so I've just been talking with people, even through online, and people are reaching out to me. And I do want to read you something that is really tough and really chilling that was just sent to me. This was a text message that was sent to a loved one she's a coach at Robb Elementary. When all of this was unfolding, this is what she sent to her family member. She said, "Someone is shooting at the school. I love you." She sent that to all of her family members. I was told that the coach, she actually hid in a bathroom while all of this was unfolding, and obviously scared for her life. She did survive. But speaking with this love, he's from Uvalde, and I want to step aside here and just talking to him, I said, give me a little bit more sense of this community. And he said, Henry, you've been saying it right. It's a small community. Everyone knows everyone. They are there and each other. We're there for each other when every time it gets rough. He says something of this magnitude isn't supposed to happen in a small farming community. There's nothing that will prepare them from moving on. He said, even though if we leave the area, they remain our roots. It's the essence of who we are. When we venture out in the world, our hearts, thoughts, and prayers are with every single citizen. As you can imagine, that is the sentiment that has been since this unfolded until now, as we continue to receive the word as we did from Governor Abbott, saying 14 children have died. I mean, it's just scary, folks. And, as Deborah had mentioned, I did speak to a family member probably about 30 minutes ago, telling me that their loved one, a 10-year-old who was a student at Robb Elementary, died here at the hospital. Something I can tell you, and you can see Irissa is pointing up there at the Air Life here at Chopper. I've been seeing them constantly coming in and out here of Uvalde Memorial Hospital. It has been nonstop. We've been seeing family members that have been leaving there, as you can see, pretty somber in their faces, not really saying much. Tears. I will tell you, as a journalist, this is where we cross that fine line. I want to give them respect right now, especially as they're just leaving the hospital, probably receiving news that they did not want to hear. And that's where so many students, as you mentioned, Deborah, being bused here in school buses to receive the critical help that we need. And speaking with that family from San Antonio who has so many family members here in Uvalde, with just so much uncertainty and unknown, but also hearing that a 10-year-old just going to school today, just 2 days left of the school year, lost her life today. That is the harsh reality that so many family members and loved ones and this small, tight-knit community are dealing with. And as I mentioned, just from that text that I received, I mean, just chilling. A coach at Robb Elementary, hearing those gunshots, saying, "Someone is shooting at the school, I love you." That was sent out to all of her family members. As I mentioned, I asked their loved one, is she okay? She hid in the bathroom. She did survive. But those are the stories that we're hearing. Those are the stories that we're going to continue to hear We're going to hear the stories of the tragedy, the stories of survival. But again, just to even just tell you as eyes on the ground, just to show you, as I have been, lots of law enforcement still directing traffic. We've got different law enforcement agencies. I've got Kinney County Sheriff's Office. As I mentioned earlier, I saw the DEA arrive here. You can see there's the Kinney County Sheriff deputies there getting into their vehicle. We even have a constable here from Galveston County. Federal law enforcement is here. We have seen some family members that have been leaving across the street, as I mentioned, just get into their car, as you can see, pretty heartbroken by receiving some of the news and the news that we just received. But that is the sentiment here at the hospital, Audrey and Deborah.
All right, Henry, thank you. We now want to take you live, still in Uvalde, to the De Leon Civic Center, where Vanessa De Leon Vanessa Croy is at the school, Robb Elementary. Vanessa, where I guess students and the teacher, their bodies are still inside that school.
Deborah, we have not confirmed that here yet. All that we can tell you is that it's a heartbreaking scene out here. Friends and family members have come here in the last 15, 20 minutes trying to find out where their family members are, where their children are. We saw a father not too long ago talking to officers looking for his daughter and trying to find out where she was because he had been to the Civic Center. I can't imagine what these families are going through right now. So we cannot confirm the children are still inside the building right now. We can tell you where the source of the investigation is. Let me step out of the way. You can see it in the back of the school here. We're actually at the front of the school, at the corner of Geraldine Street, very near the turnaround in the front. Looks like that's where the source command center is set up, kind of the source of the investigation there. That's where the majority of law enforcement has been gathered for the last hour or so. They do have all these streets blocked off over here. No one is allowed through here around anywhere around this scene. They do have the school blocked off with crime tape and officers guarding each perimeter of the campus. In fact, this is as close as we can get at this time. We do know that FBI is here. We recently saw their crime scene investigation team walk over to the scene as well. We have seen Texas Rangers, DPS, Border Patrol, and all the local law enforcement out here today. And we say state troopers and Border Patrol, we have state and federal agents, but they're also local law enforcement as well. This is a very tight-knit community. These Border Patrol agents, these DPS troopers, their children also live and thrive in this community and perhaps even go to this elementary school. Earlier today, when I got out here, shortly after something had happened with that suspect at the time, when first we heard he was in custody, just seeing the officers' faces walk from the crime scene this way, you could just see the tragedy in their faces that unfolded inside that building today. In fact, Sheriff Nolasco of Uvalde County told me right before I got here, this is our worst nightmare has just happened. He said it's just horrific. And now that we're learning what happened today, it is horrific. And our prayers go out to this community and those families today. Deb and Audrey, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Vanessa. And we just learned from Uvalde CISD's Facebook page that they are actually moving that press conference to a Facebook Live. So that's going to be aired live on the Uvalde PD Facebook page as well as the Uvalde CISD Facebook page. But we do have a crew there at the Civic Center where parents were being reunited with children. We want to go up to Victoria De Leon, who's been speaking with those families. Victoria.
Hey, Audrey, it is just the devastation, the heartbreak is just palpable here. I will say in the past 20 minutes, at least, I have not seen a lot of parents come out with their kids. I have seen parents come in and then come out maybe 10 minutes later without them. Just a few minutes ago, I spoke to one man who was here looking for his niece. They've been kind of getting the runaround and they have not been able to find his niece. So we are absolutely praying for the best possible outcome for that family. Other families walking out with their kids over the last hour or so, understandably, visibly upset. We do want to be very respectful during this very difficult time. So we have not been pushing them too hard to talk to us about one of the scariest days of their lives. But if I take a step out right now, you can see that it is still mostly just district officials, staff, a lot of media, and of course law enforcement. Uvalde CISD did say that the dismissal process is taking place at on their campuses. They're asking that parents please stay in their vehicles while picking up their children. And over, I want to say an hour ago, parents were asked to start picking up their students at the regular dismissal times at those campuses. Now, earlier today, there was this whiteboard with about more than a dozen teacher names. Those are the teachers' classrooms who were brought to the De Leon Civic Center. But again, Audrey, we're still seeing some parents, family members, and loved ones walk into the building and then coming out a few moments later without any students. So we are not totally sure how many people are in there or how many students are in there, but it's something that we are going to stay out here and keep an eye on. Audrey, Deb.
All right. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Well, we are bringing you live coverage of one of the worst mass shootings in the United States history at an elementary school. It is the second worst to have occurred. Of course, Sandy Hook, where 20 students were killed. Right now, we have confirmed 14 children killed at this elementary school today. Certainly the worst mass shooting at a school in Texas.
We also know one teacher was killed there at Robb Elementary School when this active shooter situation unfolded. We know police were able to shoot and kill the 18-year-old shooter. He apparently, according to the governor, entered with a gun and possibly another weapon. We're still waiting to hear more from law enforcement about whether there was any motive, whether they could find anything out on social media. But we do know 2 people were transferred to University Hospital. A 66-year-old woman is in critical condition and a 10-year-old girl in critical condition. But Uvalde Memorial Hospital taking the bulk of those victims.
Okay. Yes, we are. There is someone in front of our camera right there. This is a live picture at the elementary school where all of this happened. We do have cameras set up and we're getting ready to go inside the Civic Center there in Uvalde to bring you the news conference live from the superintendent there. Our cameras right there are set up at Robb Elementary School, but we have cameras at the De Leon Civic Center where we are expecting to get an update from Dr. Harrell.
Well, we did just learn through their Facebook page that they're going to be holding those press conferences through Facebook Live, through PD's Facebook
Right.
and through their Facebook. So I don't know. It wasn't very clear if they were going to let media in or if because of security they were moving to just a live. Okay,
Yes, we are. We do have a crew in there, and so we will be able to bring you that news conference on air, as it is also streamed out on social media. And we have Alicia De Leon, Vanessa.
Alicia Nieves,
Alicia
who's
Nieves.
there at the Civic
Yes.
Center. We're waiting
And Victoria
to go.
De Leon,
and Victoria De Leon, both there. And here's a live picture of the Willie De Leon Civic Center where law enforcement officials, school officials, we're going to go live now.
Good afternoon. I'm Anne-Marie Espinoza, Executive Director of Communications and Marketing for Uvalde CISD. Please understand at this time, we will be making a statement and not taking any questions. So we please ask, at this time, we will be making a statement and not taking any questions. Here to provide a statement is our Uvalde CISD Chief of Police, Pete Arredondo.
Good afternoon. As she mentioned, I'm going to make a statement, and at this point, won't take any questions. We will give you a time, but we'll be addressing the media soon. At approximately 11:32 a.m. this morning, there was a mass casualty incident at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. This school has children that are in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. I can confirm right now that we have several injuries, adults and students, and we do have some deaths. The suspect is deceased at this point. DPS is assisting with the investigation. And at this point, the investigation is leading to tell us that the suspect did act alone during this heinous crime. Families are being notified, and we are providing services to them as the district should. As far as the rest of the district is concerned, safety measures were taken to make sure that we had a safe release for the rest of the district, throughout our city of Uvalde. And we had numerous law enforcement officers and agencies that assisted with the safety release for those students. We do want to keep all their families in their prayers. I hope you do as well. And we also want to respect the privacy of the family. The crime scene is still being worked on. And again, we'll notify the parents and the families as soon as we have some news for them. Thank you so much.
We greatly appreciate understanding and patience with us. Please know at this time, we are only making a statement. We will be releasing more information as the investigation continues. We appreciate your courtesy. At this time, it concludes our press conference. Thank you.
We just heard from Pete Arredondo, the UCISD chief of police. He said that that active shooter situation that started around 11:32 this morning there at Robb Elementary School, which houses second, third, and fourth graders. He says DPS is assisting. They believe that suspect, the 18-year-old suspect who is dead, acted alone in this active shooter situation. They only wanted to make a statement. They did not take questions from the media. They said families of the injured and deceased are being notified at this time, so they are trying to respect those families.
Right. People are still finding out. The parents of those 14 children that were killed and one teacher so far. And the police chief said that the shooter, 18-year-old Salvador Ramos, acted alone. Walked into the school and killed 14 children and a teacher, and then he was shot and killed by law enforcement there. He came. Victoria De Leon is live in Uvalde. Let's go to her right now.
Hey, Deborah, yeah, just to kind of recap, it was a very short press conference, not a lot of information that we didn't already know. We do know now, though, that the shooter acted alone, and there are multiple injuries, and of course, those 14 students dead and one teacher. We are now inside of the Civic Center, where we passed by a couple of parents, families, loved ones of the Uvalde Elementary School community. We also learned that the elementary school runs from up until fourth grade, so the youngest of those students impacted maybe 9, 10 years old. So we're going to stay out here at Uvalde for the rest of the day and continue to bring you those updates as we learn more.
Thank you so much. Right now, we want to go to Henry Ramos, who is at Uvalde Memorial Hospital. He has an update for us. That's where a lot of those victims were taken earlier today. Henry.
Yeah, Audrey, I actually just spoke with a grandmother who just walked across the street from the hospital with some good news. I just interviewed her. She told me that her grandson survived. He was shot. She said that he was shot. The bullet kind of hit him right here along the leg area. It didn't hit any bones, and it just kind of went through, is what she said. But she said the way that her grandson, who's a fifth grader at Robb Elementary, described what was happening, he said they were all hiding in his classroom, obviously scared. And he told his grandmother, he said, "Grandma, it sounded like fireworks was going off. It was just nonstop." And she said that that he was shot once. He was taken here at the hospital. The grandmother named Hilda, when she got the news that there was a shooting at Robb Elementary, she called her daughter and the grandmother, just hysterical. She said, she's like, "You know what? I just got in the car. I just knew that I was going to go to the school. I was going to make sure that my grandson was okay." He was brought here at the hospital. She said for the most part, he is in good spirits. He's doing okay as best that he can, also realizing that a lot of his classmates, didn't make it, as we've been reporting, 14 children passing away here, and a lot of the children, though, taken here. But her grandson did survive. And she said, Henry, this is something that we just, and something that we have been hearing, something that I have been sharing, and talking with different people, is that they didn't expect for something like this to happen, especially given at any point, really at any point, but given that this was the last week of school. But she said her grandson just left the hospital here, and he actually walked out with a couple of police officers, I believe from Uvalde. He walked out with them. And I told her if we could share that photo with all of you. And so she said she's going to send it to me here shortly. She's actually on her way to her grandson's home just to be with him. She said she's going to hug him a little bit tighter. And she did want me to say that, for a lot of people who are watching that are not from South Central Texas, who are not from Texas, who don't know Uvalde, right? We've been saying it's a tight-knit community, but those watching across the nation, this is the type of community that knows everyone. This is the type of community, as I mentioned, that when something good happens, they're together. But when something bad happens, they're even more together. And she said, Henry, we're going to come out stronger because of this. Right now, all we need, and she said, all we need is prayers. Because the reality is, she says, I'm lucky as a grandmother. I'm able to leave with the good news that my grandson survived. He's okay. But that is not the case. Not the case for a lot of family members, knowing that their loved one, children who just went to school, did not make it out. And that's the sad part. In terms of traffic, I can tell you there's not that much out here. You still have law enforcement, but I have noticed a lot of law enforcement that was here has since left. I don't know if that indicates anything. You can actually see it looks like a few law enforcement just exiting right now of the hospital parking lot. I can see some flashing lights here. I know this right here is a law enforcement vehicle. It's an unmarked one, but I do see some more that are leaving here with their emergency lights on. But we do have police here that are just guarding the scene here. A lot of family members just walking across. Again, some with good news, others not so much. But that's the latest that I have for you here from Uvalde Memorial. Audrey and Deborah.
And Henry, wow, amazing that that student was able to tell his grandma all of those details. Was he able to say what class he was in? Was he in a gym class? Was he in the cafeteria? Or was this isolated to just one classroom? I'm sure there was a lot going on, but I don't know if he was able to relay that.
Yeah, I did ask Audrey, what other details or what else did he tell her? And obviously, as you can imagine, their priority for these families is to make sure they're okay. And so he didn't reveal much. I know that she did say that he was in his classroom. Whether it was isolated to that classroom, I don't know, or if the gunman was going elsewhere, that's something I don't know. But what I do know is that he did say that he was in the classroom hiding with other students, and told his grandmother that it sounded like fireworks were going off, that it was just repeatedly, it was nonstop. And that's what he heard. And as I mentioned, he was just kind of shot once in the leg area. Had some treatment here at Uvalde Memorial, which we know several other students were taking here, as well as others who were injured in this shooting. And but as I mentioned, thankfully for this family and for this grandmother, this fifth grader was able to walk out of here.
He was a fifth grader? We had heard there were only second, third, and fourth graders at the school.
What's that, Deborah?
Henry, did you say he was a fifth grader? We had been told that
that's what
he's a fourth grader. Okay, there were only second, third, and fourth graders at the school, and most of the injuries that we know about so far are fourth graders. So I don't know if the gunman was concentrated in that area. This little boy was in his classroom where he was shot. Is that correct, Henry?
Yes, that's correct. And she did say fifth grade. That's from what I was told, Deborah, but I don't know about the or what the gunman's focus was on, but that's what I was told from the grandmother.
Okay. All right, Henry, thank you. Well, we've just gotten word from CBS that President Biden has been informed about the shooting, and he plans to address the nation this evening. He plans to speak this evening when he is back at the White House. And now we are going to go to Vanessa Croy. She is, no, we don't have Vanessa. Okay.
Yeah. But just a devastating day for the city of Uvalde. Again, there were 14 students killed, 1 teacher killed. That suspect was shot and killed by law enforcement. A suspect said to be an 18-year-old resident of Uvalde, and they believe he acted alone. DPS is assisting. We just heard from Pete Arredondo, who is the police chief of UCISD, who made a statement, but they were not taking any questions as to respect the victims of those families. So still a lot of unknown in this, ever developing situation.
And they are still informing families as right now. That's what the police chief said. These 14 children and the teacher. So Vanessa Croy, who has been at Robb Elementary all afternoon, has told us, I'm sorry, I'm being told, what is that? Monica? Okay. Vanessa told us that parents were showing up as recently as 30 minutes ago at the school, waiting for some word about their children. It's just heartbreaking. It really is just hard to. Okay, all right, Vanessa, we're going to go to Vanessa Croy now live at Robb Elementary. Vanessa?
Well, that's right, Deborah. In the last hour, we've seen families coming up here asking where their children are at this hour. We just had a group standing behind us wondering, where do they go? What do they do? They've been to the Civic Center. Where do they go next? All that we can tell you is that there are plans in place to create another staging area, but that's all we can tell you right now. DPS has not confirmed anything to us where that will be and when that will be. As soon as we get it, we'll definitely share it. We have been asked to move back a little bit from the front of the school. We were just in front of that sign, the sign on the corner a few minutes ago, but we were asked to move back because the crime scene investigation is going to extend further toward this side of the school. Now you can see in the front of the school, we have a little bit better perspective now from where we're standing. That is San Antonio SWAT team in that the large Humvee vehicle out there. We saw the DEA here earlier today. We know the FBI crime scene investigative unit is here as well. We do know that most of the investigation is focused on the back of the school. We can't see where that law enforcement group is gathered any longer since we had to change positions, but you can see a canopy behind the school towards the back. I believe earlier somebody said the teacher's parking lot. Audrey said the teacher's parking lot. So that is where it looks like a command center is set up, and that's where the focus of the investigation is. However, we were just told that investigation is moving different areas closer to the front of the school. That's why we were asked to move at this time. And I can also tell you, we're kind of tight over here with all the media that's starting to line up, but other community members have come out here today. We just talked to a school district employee, and I asked her, does she have a child at the school? And she just said, no, I just wanted to be here. Henry was just talking about how close and tight-knit this community is, and that's very true. Everyone here cares about each other, and including all the law enforcement right now, many of them from this community, DPS, Border Patrol, Sheriff's Office, who are from this community and may have friends or family members, children. They'll go to the school here. So it's definitely hitting this community very hard right now. Deb and Audrey, we're going to send it back to you.
It's a heartbreaking situation. Thanks so much, Vanessa. And we want to get back to that sound with Governor Greg Abbott. He briefed the media earlier today on this deadly active shooter situation in Uvalde.
The shooter was Salvador Romas, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun, and he may have also had a rifle, but that is not yet confirmed according to my most recent report. He shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly, 14 students and killed a teacher. Mr. Romas, the shooter, he himself is deceased and is believed that responding officers killed him.
That's Governor Greg Abbott. And KENS 5's Zach Briggs has also been getting reaction from leaders around the state.
Tragedy in Uvalde sparking reaction from lawmakers. Congressman Tony Gonzalez coming out saying, "My heart breaks for the city of Uvalde. Pray for our families." Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan coming out on social media stating, quote, "This is a horrific and heartbreaking situation. I've reached out to Representative King and I'm keeping in touch with Texas DPS. Please pray for the students, teachers, families, and everyone else involved." Zach Briggs, KENS 5.
A hard day in Uvalde, but right now we want to go to Alicia Nieves, who's going to give us another recap of everything that we learned in that media briefing that just took place. Alicia.
Audrey, the briefing was less than 5 minutes. DPS members were in there, district officials, and the police chief here in Uvalde. He said that multiple injuries were reported, didn't give as many details, I should mention, as Governor Abbott did. But what we know is that 14 students and 1 teacher were killed. Around 11:30 is when everything started this morning at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. I'm standing outside of the Civic Center where parents have gone in today to pick up their students. This is where the press conference happened about 15 minutes ago. Chief Arredondo says that Robb Elementary holds students 2nd through 4th grade. He says several injuries were reported, but once again, our numbers are coming from Governor Abbott. The chief said the suspect, who is 18-year-old and who is from Uvalde, is dead, and they believe that he acted alone. DPS, they're assisting with this investigation. The chief says that measures were taken to make sure that the school district had safe release for students. And I know this was a frustrating time, and it still is, for parents here in Uvalde who have students at this school in this district, because there was a little confusion on whether they could pick students up at the school, whether they had to come to the Civic Center. But the district, who has been communicating on social media, is saying that parents can pick up their students either here, if their classes were designated to come to the Civic Center, or at their respective campus. The bus schedules, they said, are not running tonight, and they said that after school activities are also canceled. The district is just asking everybody who is watching to keep these families in your prayers. We have never heard of anything like this happening in Uvalde. I was monitoring social media, and of course you hear conversations coming up about Sandy Hook. We had Sutherland Springs, the shooting at the church that happened in 2017 here. And this community is just overwhelmed, and you can tell that the district is just trying to work with parents to make sure that as many as possible are reunited with their students. We have been standing out here since about maybe 2 o'clock. And since then, we have seen quite a few parents come in and walk out in tears. And a few of them remain inside at this moment. We were not taken to where, if they still do have any children inside, we were not taken there. I do believe, actually, I'm about to see one walk out. But we do know that there is still a lot of activity in this building. The crime scene also at Robb Elementary, it is obviously still being worked on, still being active. The district says that as soon as they get new information, they will relay as much as possible to these parents. So outside of the Civic Center right now, we have district officials, we have parents, we have members of law enforcement, we had the sheriff's office and border patrol out here securing the perimeter. If you are from Uvalde, this is off of West Main Street. So this is a very, very active area outside of the Civic Center. So if you are driving down West Main Street, just be prepared to slow down. You're going to encounter more traffic than usual because of the staging area, because all the journalists are here, and you still have some pickups going on at this time. But you have many parents just still wondering what will happen with school tomorrow. We do know that this was the last week of school, so right now, the students they were excited to go on summer vacation. They were doing, you get that. All of us were, in grade school once. We remember being just excited to see our classmates, for the last time before summer. Many students in Uvalde School District were getting their yearbook signed, just planning for summer vacation. And then this happens this morning. So we are continuing to monitor the situation. And as soon as we get more details, we will pass them along to you. But for now, I'm live in Uvalde. Alicia Nieves, KENS 5.
Alicia, thank you. Well, it was